My name is Sarah, and the day I realized my mom had been stealing my identity for 3 years started like any other Tuesday. I was sitting at my desk sipping terrible office coffee when my phone buzzed with a notification that made my blood freeze. Your credit card application has been approved. Welcome to Chase Sapphire Reserve. I hadn't applied for any credit card. My fingers flew across the screen, opening my banking app, my credit monitoring service, everything I could think of. And that's when I saw them: 4 credit cards I'd never opened, 2 loans I'd never taken, and a mortgage pre-approval in my name for a house I'd never even looked at. All of them had one thing in common: the address on file was my mom's house, the house I'd moved out of 2 years ago when I finally saved enough to afford my own place. Before I tell you how deep this betrayal went and how I made sure my mother never saw it coming, stay with me. If you've ever trusted someone completely only to discover they'd been using you the entire time, you need to hear this. Hit subscribe because this story is about to get darker than you think. And tell me in the comments, would you forgive your own mother if she stole your future? Because I didn't, and I'm not sorry. The rest of that Tuesday passed in a fog. I couldn't focus on spreadsheets or client emails. My brain kept circling back to the same question. How did my mom get access to my social security number, my personal information, my entire financial identity? And then I remembered. 3 years ago, when I just graduated college, my mom insisted on helping me file my taxes. "You're so busy with job hunting," she'd said, her voice dripping with concern. "Let me handle the boring paperwork, honey. That's what mothers are for." I'd been grateful then, relieved even. I was drowning in interviews and rejection emails. Having one less thing to worry about felt like a gift. Now I realized it wasn't a gift. It was the moment she'd copied everything she needed to become me whenever she wanted. You know that feeling when your whole life suddenly clicks into a different picture? When you look back at moments you thought were love and realize they were traps. That's what hit me as I sat there, staring at my phone screen. Every time she'd offered to help with paperwork. Every time she'd asked for my ID to add me to her insurance or her gym membership. Every casual question about my income, my job, my savings goals. She hadn't been proud of me. She'd been taking notes. I left work early under the pretext of a migraine, which wasn't entirely untrue. My head was throbbing with anger, betrayal, and worse. The thought that if my mother had been doing this for 3 years, what else might she have done gnawed at me. When I got home, I laid everything out on the kitchen table. Bank statements, credit reports, old emails. I made a timeline. The first fake account was opened 6 months after I gave her my tax documents. A $15,000 personal loan. Then a credit card, then another one. Each one perfectly coincided with the times I received a pay raise or promotion. She'd been tracking my success like a hunter tracks prey. The better I did, the more she stole. Tell me honestly, if you discovered your own mother had been living a second financial life in your name, would your first instinct be to call her, to scream, to cry? Mine was to document everything. Maybe that makes me cold. But I'd spent my whole childhood watching my mom twist every conversation, every argument, every emotion until she was the victim and everyone else was the villain. I knew if I confronted her without proof, she'd find a way to make this my fault. So instead I called my best friend Marcus. Marcus had known my mom since we were kids. He'd seen her manipulate his parents into paying for a vacation by crying about how hard single motherhood was, conveniently forgetting to mention my dad sent child support every month. When I told him what I'd found, he didn't gasp or ask if I was sure. He just said, "What do you need?" "A lawyer," I replied, "and maybe a recording device." "Done," he said. "But Sarah, you know she's going to explode when she finds out you're coming for her, right?" I smiled, even though my hands were shaking. "That's what I'm counting on." The next morning I walked into a law office that specialized in identity theft and fraud. The lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Chen, listened to my story without interrupting. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and said something I'll never forget. "Your mother didn't just commit fraud, she committed financial abuse. And the fact that she's your parent doesn't make it less of a crime, it makes it worse." Hearing someone else name it, call it what it actually was, broke something open in my chest. I'd been trying so hard not to feel like I was overreacting, but Patricia's words gave me permission to be as angry as I actually was. We filed a police report that afternoon. Then we filed disputes with every credit bureau. Then we started the process of freezing my credit and flagging my social security number. Every step felt like peeling back layers of my mother's deception. The more we dug, the worse it got. She'd used my name to co-sign a car loan for my younger sister Emily. She'd opened a store credit card at a furniture place and maxed it out. She'd even tried to use my identity to get approved for a bigger apartment. The apartment thing hit differently, because it meant she'd been planning to keep doing this. She wasn't desperate and making one bad choice. She was building an entire financial strategy around stealing from her own daughter. Would you still call it family loyalty at that point, or would you call it what it is? A con artist who happened to give birth to you. I didn't tell my mom any of this yet. I went to her house that Sunday for our usual family dinner like nothing had changed. My dad was grilling in the backyard. Emily was scrolling through her phone complaining about college expenses, and my mom was in the kitchen humming while she chopped vegetables. Picture perfect domestic bliss. "Sarah," she called when she saw me. "Come help me with the salad, honey." I walked over, picked up a knife and started slicing tomatoes. My hands were steady. My voice was calm. "Mom," I said, "I got a weird notification this week, something about a credit card I didn't apply for." Her hand paused for just a fraction of a second, then she laughed, light and breezy. "Oh, you know how these companies are, always sending fake alerts to scare people into checking their credit. It's a marketing thing." "Is it?" I asked, keeping my eyes on the cutting board, because I checked my credit report, and there are 4 cards I never opened, all sent to your address. The kitchen went very quiet, even the knife in her hand stopped moving. Then she turned to me with this look, concerned, motherly, perfectly crafted. "Sweetheart, are you sure? Maybe you applied for them and forgot. You've been so stressed with work." There it was, the gaslighting. The gentle suggestion that I was confused, overwhelmed, imagining things. This was the moment she expected me to doubt myself, to apologize for accusing her, to let it go because family doesn't make waves. Instead, I set down my knife and looked her straight in the eye. "I'm sure, because I filed a police report yesterday, and a fraud claim with the credit bureaus. They're investigating every account opened in my name for the past 3 years." Color drained from her face, not guilt, not shame, just cold, calculating panic. "You did what?" she whispered. "You heard me." My dad walked in from the backyard, completely oblivious. "Burgers are ready, who's hungry?" No one answered. My mom was staring at me like I'd just pulled a gun, and maybe in her world I had, because the one thing a manipulator can't survive is exposure. "Sarah," she said, voice shaking now, "can we talk about this privately?" "No," I said simply. "Because this involves Dad too, and Emily." I turned to my sister. "Did you know Mom co-signed a car loan using my name and my credit? Not hers, mine." Emily's eyes went wide. "What? No, Mom said she was helping me with her credit." "She lied," I said. "She used my identity because her credit is too destroyed to qualify for anything." My dad finally caught up. "Wait, what's going on?" My mom launched into her defense. The tears came right on cue. "I was trying to help Emily. We were desperate. You know how expensive college is. I thought you'd understand. I thought you'd want to help your sister." "By stealing from me?" I asked. "By destroying my credit and my financial future without even asking." "You have a good job," she shot back, and now the tears were gone. Now I was seeing the real her, the version she usually kept hidden under fake sweetness. "You don't need 7 credit cards. Emily needed a car. I needed furniture. You're selfish for not understanding that family helps family." This is the part I need you to really hear, because if you've ever been called selfish for setting boundaries, you know how much it hurts, how it makes you want to shrink back and apologize. But here's what I'd learned in therapy over the past year. Calling someone selfish for refusing to be used isn't an argument, it's manipulation, and I was done falling for it. Family helps family, I repeated slowly. Family doesn't commit identity theft. Family doesn't forge documents. Family doesn't destroy their daughter's credit score and then call her selfish when she finds out. My dad looked between us, lost. "Someone needs to explain this to me right now." So I did. I pulled out printed copies of every fraudulent account, every loan, every credit card. I laid them on the kitchen table like evidence at a trial, because that's exactly what this was. My dad's face went from confused to horrified as he read through the papers. "Linda," he said to my mom, "tell me this isn't real." She tried a different tactic, the victim card. "I made mistakes, okay? I was scared, we were behind on bills, I panicked. But I was going to pay it all back, I just needed time." 3 years, I said. "You've had 3 years, you didn't pay back a single dollar, you just kept opening more accounts." Emily stood up from the table, looking sick. "Mom, you told me that car loan was your credit. You made me think I was building my own credit history. How much did you steal from Sarah?" My mom's face twisted. "I didn't steal, I borrowed from my own daughter. That's not a crime." "Actually," I said, pulling out one more paper. "It is. According to the lawyer I hired, it's identity theft, fraud, and financial abuse. and I'm pressing charges. The explosion I'd been waiting for finally came. My mom screamed that I was ungrateful, that I was destroying the family, that I'd regret this, that no daughter should treat her mother this way. My dad tried to calm her down. Emily started crying, and I stood there completely calm and said the words I'd been practicing all week. I'm done being your backup plan, I'm done being the person you use whenever you need money, and I'm definitely done pretending this is normal. I picked up my bag and walked toward the door. My mom called after me, voice dripping with venom now. If you go through with this, you're not my daughter anymore, you'll never be welcome in this house again. I turned back one last time. Good, I said, because I don't want to be part of a family that treats theft like love, and I walked out. Behind me I heard my mom sobbing, my dad shouting, Emily asking questions no one wanted to answer, but I didn't go back, not to comfort them, not to fix it, not to make myself smaller so everyone else could feel better. Have you ever walked away from your family knowing you can never go back, knowing that choosing yourself means losing people you've loved your entire life? It feels like drowning and breathing for the first time all at once. That night Marcus came over with pizza and beer. We sat on my couch, not really watching the TV, just existing in the heavy silence of a life that had just changed forever. You did the right thing, he said finally. I know, I replied. So why do I feel like garbage? Because they trained you to feel guilty for having boundaries, but that's their problem now, not yours. He was right, but knowing something intellectually and feeling it emotionally are two different things. For the next few days my phone exploded. My mom sent texts that swung wildly between apologetic and vicious. My dad called asking me to drop the charges for the sake of family unity. Emily sent a long message saying she didn't know the loan was fraud and she felt sick about it. I answered Emily because she was a victim too. I told her none of this was her fault and that I didn't blame her. I told my dad I'd think about it, which was a lie. I wasn't thinking about anything except moving forward, and I didn't answer my mom at all, because there was nothing left to say to someone who saw me as a resource instead of a person. The police investigation moved faster than I expected. Apparently my mom had been sloppy. She'd used the same email address for multiple accounts. She'd signed documents in her own handwriting. She'd left a digital trail so obvious that even she couldn't lie her way out of it. Patricia called me 2 weeks after I filed the report. They're moving forward with charges, she said. Fraud in the 2nd degree. Your mother could face up to 7 years. 7 years. The number sat heavy in my stomach. This was real now. This wasn't just me being dramatic or overreacting. This was my mother facing actual prison time because of what she'd done to me. Part of me waited for the guilt to swallow me whole, for the voice in my head that sounded like her to tell me I was destroying the family, that I should have just forgiven her, that good daughters don't send their mothers to prison. But a louder voice, one that sounded like me, said something different. Good mothers don't steal from their children, and I wasn't responsible for the consequences of her choices, only my own. The court date was set for 6 weeks out. In the meantime, I focused on rebuilding. I met with credit counselors. I disputed every fraudulent charge. I froze my credit so thoroughly that even I couldn't open a new account without jumping through hoops. And slowly, painfully, I started to feel like my life was mine again. But the story wasn't over yet, because 3 days before the court date I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, a man's voice said, "Is this Sarah Mitchell?" "Yes, who's this?" "My name is David Torres. I'm a private investigator, and I think you need to know something about your mother that the police haven't found yet." My heart stopped. What a why? "Oh, talking about, can we meet?" he asked, "because what I found makes the identity theft look like small-time crime. Your mother has been doing this to other people too, and one of them wants to talk to you." I sat down hard on my couch, the room spinning. "Who?" "Your mom's ex-boyfriend from 10 years ago. He never pressed charges, but he has evidence, and he thinks you deserve to know the truth about who Linda Mitchell really is. Tell me, if someone offered to show you proof that your parent had been a con artist their whole life, would you want to see it? Or would you rather keep the version of them you grew up with? Because I said yes to that meeting. And what David Torres showed me changed everything I thought I knew about my mother and my entire childhood. I met David Torres at a quiet coffee shop on the edge of town, the kind of place where no one asks questions and everyone minds their own business. He was older than I expected, maybe mid-50s, with tired eyes that had seen too many ugly truths. He slid a thick manila folder across the table before I'd even ordered my coffee. "Before you open that," he said, "I want you to know I debated whether to contact you at all. But my client, Richard, He saw your mother's name in a local news article about the fraud case. And he said if her daughter is finally standing up to her, she deserves to know everything. My hands shook as I opened the folder. Inside were bank statements, cancelled checks, email printouts and photographs, lots of photographs. My mother with a man I didn't recognize, my mother at restaurants I'd never been to, my mother holding keys to a car that wasn't ours. Who is Richard? I asked. David leaned back. 10 years ago your mother dated him for about 18 months. He's a successful architect, widowed, lonely. She met him at a charity event and positioned herself as a struggling single mother who'd been abandoned by her husband. I blinked. But my dad was still in the picture 10 years ago. They were married. Exactly, David said. She lied about everything, told Richard your dad was dead, told him she was barely surviving. He felt sorry for her, started helping with bills. Then she asked to borrow money for your sister's medical emergency. Emily never had a medical emergency, I whispered, flipping through the documents. There it was. A check for $25,000 made out to my mother, for emergency surgery that never happened. Richard found out 6 months later when he ran into your dad at a hardware store. Your very alive, very married dad. When he confronted your mother, she disappeared, changed her number, blocked him everywhere. He tried to report it, but his lawyer said it would be hard to prove since he'd given her the money willingly. So he let it go, until now. The coffee shop suddenly felt too small, too hot, too loud. I pushed the folder away, my stomach churning. How many others? I asked. David's expression darkened. That I know of, 3. Richard was the biggest payout, but there were 2 others before him, smaller amounts, same pattern. She finds lonely men, usually older, usually with money. She plays the struggling mother. She takes what she can get, then she vanishes. I thought about my childhood. The times my mom would disappear for weekends, claiming she was visiting her sick aunt. The expensive purses that would suddenly appear in her closet. The way she'd always have cash when we needed it, even during the times my dad was out of work. I thought she was just good with money. Turns out she was just good at stealing it. Why are you telling me this? I asked David. Why now? He pulled out one more document, a letter handwritten on nice paper. Richard wanted you to have this. He said if you're brave enough to take her to court, you should know you're not the first person she's destroyed, and you won't be the last unless someone stops her. I read the letter right there, tears blurring the words. Richard wrote about how he'd blamed himself for years, how he'd thought he was stupid for falling for her lies, how seeing my name in the news made him realize my mother was still out there, still hunting, still hurting people. And he wanted me to know that pressing charges wasn't cruel, it was necessary. When I left the coffee shop, I called Patricia immediately. We need to add something to the case, I said, my voice steady despite the hurricane in my chest. My mother has a history and I have witnesses. Patricia didn't ask questions. She just said, bring me everything you have. That night I sat in my apartment surrounded by evidence, not just of my own stolen identity, but of a pattern spanning decades. My mother wasn't just a desperate woman who made a mistake. She was a career criminal who happened to have children. Have you ever had to completely rewrite your understanding of a person you've known your whole life? It's not like flipping a switch. It's like watching a building collapse in slow motion and realizing it was always rotten underneath. I called Emily. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice small. Sarah, I need to tell you something, I said, and you're not going to want to believe it. I told her about Richard, about the others, about the decade of lies that went far beyond the identity theft. Emily was quiet for a long time. Then she said something that broke my heart. I think I always knew something was wrong, I just didn't want to see it. What do you mean? I asked. She took a shaky breath. Remember when I was 12 and Mom told us Dad was going on business trips every other weekend? I saw him once, at the grocery store. He told me he was staying at a motel because Mom had kicked him out. But when I asked her about it, she said he was lying, that he was trying to turn us against her. I believed her because I wanted to, because believing Dad meant our whole family was broken. My throat tightened. I'm so sorry. Don't be, she said. You're doing what I was too scared to do. You're telling the truth even when it's ugly, even when it costs everything. We stayed on the phone for over an hour, trading memories that suddenly made sense. The times Mom would accuse Dad of things that didn't add up. The way she'd isolate us from extended family by claiming they were toxic. The way she'd rewrite history to make herself the victim of every situation. Emily had absorbed all of it like poison, and so had I. We'd just processed it differently. She'd stayed small and compliant. I'd worked myself to exhaustion trying to earn love I thought I had to deserve. The court date arrived faster than I was ready for. I walked into that courtroom with Patricia on one side and Marcus on the other. My dad was there, sitting alone in the back. Emily sat with me. My mother sat at the defendant's table in a carefully chosen outfit that screamed respectable suburban mom. She didn't look at me once. The prosecutor laid out the case methodically. The fraudulent accounts, the forged signatures, the systematic theft over 3 years. Then Patricia stood up for the victim impact statement. "Your Honor," she said, "Sarah Mitchell isn't here to ruin her mother's life. She's here to reclaim her own. For 3 years, the defendant used her daughter's identity to fund a lifestyle she couldn't afford, but this isn't an isolated incident." Patricia introduced Richard's testimony via deposition, then the other 2 men who'd come forward after hearing about the case. My mother's lawyer objected, tried to claim it was irrelevant, but the judge allowed it, because it showed pattern, it showed intent, it showed that my mother wasn't a desperate parent who made one bad choice. She was a predator who targeted the people closest to her. When it was my turn to speak, I walked to the stand with my notes in hand. But when I looked out at the courtroom, at my mother's blank face and my father's broken expression, I put the notes down. "I don't have a dramatic speech prepared," I said. "I'm not going to cry or yell or beg for justice. I'm just going to tell you what it feels like to realize your own mother saw you as a product instead of a person." I talked about the panic attack I'd had when I saw those credit alerts, about the therapy sessions I'd needed to process the betrayal, about the fear that I'd never be able to trust anyone again, because if my own mother could do this, who couldn't? "People keep asking me if I feel guilty for pressing charges," I said. "If I'm sad about destroying my family. But my mother destroyed my family the first time she decided her wants mattered more than my future." I'm just the one who finally said it out loud. The judge listened, the jury listened, and for the first time in my life I felt like people were actually hearing me instead of just waiting for me to stop talking. The verdict came back 3 days later. Guilty on all counts of identity theft and fraud. My mother showed emotion then. She cried. She screamed that I'd destroyed her life, that she'd never forgive me, that I was dead to her. The judge sentenced her to 4 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 2. She also ordered my mother to pay full restitution for every dollar stolen, plus damages for the credit repair and legal fees. As they led her out of the courtroom in handcuffs, my mother turned to look at me one last time. Not with love, not with regret, with pure hatred. And you know what I felt? Nothing, not relief, not satisfaction, just the quiet understanding that I'd done what needed to be done. Outside the courthouse, my dad approached me. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past 2 months. "Sarah," he said, "I didn't know, I swear I didn't know it was this bad." Part of me wanted to believe him. Part of me wondered how he couldn't have known, but I was too tired to be angry at him too. "Dad," I said gently, "you chose not to see it because seeing it would have meant doing something about it, and that was easier than standing up to her." He nodded slowly, tears in his eyes. "I failed you, I failed both of you." "Yeah," I said, "you did, but you can start fixing it now by being honest, with yourself, with Emily, with anyone else she might have hurt." Emily came over that night with takeout and wine. We sat on my couch eating lo mein straight from the containers, not really talking, just existing in the space of 2 people who'd survived the same war. "Do you think she'll ever admit what she did was wrong?" Emily asked. I shook my head. "No, people like Mom don't apologize, they double down, they rewrite history. They convince themselves they're the victim no matter what evidence says otherwise." "So what now?" she asked. "Now," I said, "we build lives that are ours, not defined by her, not controlled by her, just ours." Emily smiled, small and sad and hopeful all at once. "I like the sound of that." The weeks after the trial were strange, quiet in a way I wasn't used to. No angry texts from my mother, no guilt trips, no manipulation, just silence and space to finally breathe. I started therapy twice a week. I joined a support group for victims of family financial abuse and discovered I wasn't alone. There were dozens of us. People whose parents had stolen their identities, drained their accounts, destroyed their credit. We swapped stories and strategies and slowly started to believe we weren't the crazy ones. I went on dates again. Carefully. Slowly. With someone Marcus introduced me from his gym. A guy named Alex who'd also had a complicated family situation and understood why I needed to take things at my own pace. We went for coffee, then dinner, then a movie where we barely watched the screen because we were too busy talking about everything except our families. 6 months after the trial, I got a letter from the prison. My mother wanted to see me. She claimed she'd been in therapy, that she'd had revelations, that she wanted to apologize and start rebuilding our relationship. I read the letter 3 times, then I wrote back. I'm glad you're getting help. I genuinely hope therapy works for you, but I don't owe you forgiveness. I don't owe you a relationship. I don't owe you anything. You spent 3 years stealing from me and decades lying to everyone who loved you. The consequence of that is losing your daughter, not because I'm cruel, but because I finally learned that loving someone doesn't mean letting them destroy you. I wish you well, but I'm done. I never heard from her again. A year after the trial, Emily graduated from college. I was there in the front row, screaming louder than anyone when they called her name. My dad was there too. We weren't close, we probably never would be, but we were civil. We were trying, and that was more than I'd expected. After the ceremony, Emily pulled me aside. I need to tell you something, she said. I'm changing my last name. Legally, I don't want to be a Mitchell anymore. I want to be an Ellis, like Grandma's maiden name. I understood immediately. Sometimes the only way to move forward is to cut ties completely, even symbolic ones. I think that's brave, I said. She hugged me tight. I learned it from you. That night as I drove home through the city lights, I thought about everything that had happened, about the woman I'd been a year ago, terrified and betrayed and drowning in someone else's debt, about the woman I was now, scarred but standing, damaged but not destroyed. People ask me sometimes if I regret pressing charges, if I wish I'd handled it differently, if I miss having a mother. The truth is complicated. Do I wish my mother had been a different person? Yes. Do I wish she'd loved me the way daughters deserve to be loved? Absolutely. But do I regret choosing myself? Not for a second. Because here's what I learned. Loving your family doesn't mean sacrificing yourself for them. Setting boundaries isn't cruel. And walking away from people who hurt you even when they're blood isn't betrayal. It's survival. My mother taught me a lot of things. How to balance a checkbook. How to spot a lie. How to survive in a world that doesn't always choose you. But the most important thing she taught me was what I didn't want to become. I didn't want to be someone who used people and called it love, someone who took and never gave back, someone who destroyed their children's futures and called it helping. So I became something else, someone who set boundaries, someone who chose honesty over comfort, someone who learned that the hardest person to stand up to is sometimes the one who gave you life. And you know what? I sleep better now than I did when I was trying to keep the peace. My credit score has improved. My savings account is mine. My future is mine, not someone else's. If you're reading this and your family is exploiting you financially or emotionally, I want you to know this: you don't have to sacrifice yourself to please others. Not for your mother, not for your father, not for the people who raised you. You deserve security and happiness. You deserve respect. You don't deserve a life defined by someone else's bad choices. And if the only way to get that is to walk away, then walk away. Don't look back. Don't apologize. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for choosing yourself, because at the end of the day, you're the only one who has to live in your skin. Make sure it's a life worth living. So tell me in the comments, if you were in my position, would you have pressed charges? Would you have walked away? Or would you have tried one more time to fix a relationship that was broken from the start? Because I know my choice isn't everyone's choice, but it was the right choice for me, and that's all that matters. My name is Sarah, and I'm not my mother's victim anymore. I'm just a woman who learned to choose herself, and if that makes me the villain in her story, I can live with that. Because in my story, I'm finally the hero.